So today, I want to talk about we are what we think. Has anyone ever had the experience where you thought of someone and out of the blue they phone you a few days later? Mm-hmm. Or you speak about needing to go do something and somehow magically a ticket arrives or something happens that just seems to be an answered prayer. Today I want to examine the power that thought has on our lives and recognize that what we're talking about when that happens is real, it's not coincidence. So, I believe the next step in our evolution as humans is to grow beyond our need to respond to life from our fear-based ego consciousness and instead to grow into the constant awareness that we are expressions of the love-based consciousness which we call God. And our challenge is to remember that whether we're speaking from ego or from God, we are always creating. We are already and always, always creating. And how we create is up to us. Do we do it from an energy of love which adds to the world with joy and peace and happiness? Or do we create from an energy of fear which robs us of joy and love and happiness? How we create is up to us. From the way I speak about God and the ego, you may be thinking that I'm thinking of them as two opposing forces that are at war with each other, and I want to make clear that that is not my intention. Energy is energy. Everything creates with the same principle. The difference lies in the intention and in the attention with which we create. And that has a direct impact on how our lives unfold. Now, you guys who know me know how much I love science and how I love it when I find that it supports spiritual teachings. And quantum physics has shown us that everything at its core is energy. The smallest particles that we know of today, and by now it may even have become more refined, are called quarks. And they were discovered in the 1970s, not that long ago. They are found in electrons and protons, which are found in atoms, which are found in cells, which is what everything is made of. So at our core, we're all quarks. You thought it was quirks? Yeah. According to sciencefocus.com, quarks are best described as vibration. They're not solid. Everything is energy. Everything is vibration. More recent studies have shown that people who observe an experiment can influence the outcome of the experiment simply by observing it and intending and expecting an outcome. That's cool. Our thoughts have power. That is great news. It's also scary news, because we're in our infancy in understanding the science, but we're even more in our infancy in our readiness to truly believe it and put it to use. And yet, at some level, as I said in introduction, we all know that our thoughts have power. When we get that phone call from out of the blue, when we run into a person on the street that we haven't seen for ages but who we thought of 3 days ago, that's attracted energy. We already create because we are energetic beings. And our magnetic power, our vibration, magnifies with the intention and focus that we give it. And I think that's what Jesus meant when he spoke of two or more being gathered. There in the midst of them am I. about the power of prayer. When we pray, we are creating with intention as opposed to creating by default. And I think Jesus' suggestion to pray without ceasing is a reminder that we should be mindful of our thoughts and to manage our power wisely. Several years ago, a study was conducted in Washington where for 3 weeks, a group of people practiced transcendental meditation with a focus on peace. And in those 3 weeks, the crime rate in the city went down by 23%, statistically significant. We are beings of vibration, and that means that we have magnetic attracting power. The next time some guy says to you, hey, you have a magnetic personality, you can say, yes, I know. And how do we create? Our thoughts lead to our feelings, and our feelings have energy. So we're quite literally magnets. Why does this matter? Because it offers insight into why our lives are showing up the way that they do. Our thoughts create our experiences. 500 years before the time of Jesus, the Buddha said, and I quote, "All that we are is a result of what we have thought." Or, as Henry Ford put it much more recently, whether you think you can or think you can't, either way, you are right. End quote. The spiritual law of attraction states that energy goes where attention flows. We get more of what we focus on, good or bad. And if we expect to see the negative, that is what will show up. That is what we will see. The world will rise to the level of our expectation, no matter how low. In a nutshell, negative thoughts, negative emotions, negative experiences. Positive thoughts, positive emotions, positive experiences. So what can we do to increase the joy, the laughter, the love and peace in our lives? I'll give you a few ideas to move our thinking from negative to positive, to raise our vibrations, to move from that darkness into light. Know, as I always do, that nothing that I say is doctrine or dogma. If it feels good to you and resonates with you, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Much of what I'm speaking about today is because I need to learn it. And I'm delighted to share it with you because it gives me an opportunity to really dig deep into it. So, first thing I suggest that we do is to observe our thoughts and how we are labeling our experiences. As we name it, so we claim it. You may have heard the saying that all events are neutral. Events just are. It is only when we label an event, how we name it, how we claim it, that we give it power. And that is how we name it changes from person to person. You may think today is awesome, sunny and hot. Someone else may think it's awful for the same reason. It's beautiful. However, for other people it might not be. If they're in an apartment and it's hot, it may be awful for them. Changes from person to person, that's the part that's important. Shakespeare knew this in the 1600s. In the play Hamlet, Hamlet has to go to Denmark. On the road, he meets up with his old buddies, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Love those names. They are also on their way to Denmark. And Hamlet says to them, asks them what they've done to be sentenced to such a prison. Rosencrantz replies, that if Denmark is a prison, then the world must also be a prison. And Hamlet agrees. He says, and I quote, "A goodly one in which there are many confines, wards, and dungeons, Denmark being one of the worst." Rosencrantz replies, "We think not so, my lord." And Hamlet says, "Why, then it's none to you, for there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. To me, it's a prison." What a grump Hamlet was.
Yeah.
What a depressing worldview. We all know that it didn't turn out too well for him. You just know that things are not going to work for Hamlet. So the first step is to observe our thoughts. Are they gloomy and depressed? Are they joyful and optimistic? Second, we become aware that we are the ones who own our thoughts and we have the power to change how we think. We can change from ego-based thoughts of fear and judgment and anger to love-based thoughts of compassion and empathy and kindness. And we can do so in an instant. Thinking of a place of loving kindness will assume good intention and tends to give the benefit of the doubt in any situation. It basically assumes that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. And this approach can radically change the lens through which you experience your life. Stephen Covey calls this change in perspective a paradigm shift. In his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, he offers this example. "I remember," and I quote, "I remember a mini paradigm shift I experienced one Sunday coming on a subway in New York. People were sitting quietly, some reading newspapers, some lost in thought, some resting with their eyes closed. It was a calm and peaceful scene. Suddenly a man and his children entered the subway car. The children were so loud and rambunctious that instantly the whole climate changed. The man sat down next to me and closed his eyes, apparently oblivious to the situation. The children were yelling back and forth, throwing things, even grabbing people's papers. It was very disturbing, and yet the man sitting next to me did nothing. It was difficult not to feel irritated. I could not believe that he could be so insensitive as to let his children run wild like that and do nothing about it, taking no responsibility at all. It was easy to see that everyone else on the subway was feeling irritated too. So finally, with what I felt was unusual patience and restraint, I turned to him and said, 'Sir, your children are really disturbing a lot of people. I wonder if you could control them a little more.' The man lifted his gaze as if to come to a consciousness of the situation for the first time and said softly, 'Oh, you're right. I guess I should do something about it. We just came from the hospital where their mother died about an hour ago. I don't know what to think, and I guess they don't know how to handle it either.'" Covey goes on to say, "Can you imagine what I felt at that moment? My paradigm shifted. Suddenly, I saw things differently, and because I saw things differently, I felt differently, and I behaved differently. Everything changed in an instant." End quote. Wow. What a powerful experience. I read this book well over 10 years ago, and I've never forgotten this story. What changed? Nothing. What changed? Everything. The children, they continued to be unruly. Everybody could agree with that. The father, he sat there continuing to be out of it. The rest of the people on the train continued to be as angry as they were. The situation itself was neutral. It could be measured. It could be observed. What changed for Covey was the meaning that he attached to the situation. And that is where our power lies. That man went from anger to compassion in an instant. And all he did was choose to change how he thought about it. He let go of his judgment, tapped into kindness, gave the story a different meaning, and it transformed his experience. So, observe your thoughts, live from a place of loving kindness, and give people the benefit of the doubt rather than a place and a thought of criticism and judgment. Next, and it's an important thing to note with the story, is that we need to be aware that we have the power to choose our thoughts, and by doing so, to choose to change our experiences. In those few minutes, before he exploded in anger, as he was sitting there in the subway car seething, Covey had chosen to create pain for himself. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. He had always had the power to choose his experience. Even before he knew what the truth of what that man and his family were going through, he still had the power to choose his experience. He could have chosen then, before he knew, to silently bless those kids. He could have chosen to enjoy their youthful energy. He could have chosen to reminisce about his own childhood. Instead, he chose to become angry. And how did his anger serve anything? It didn't make him feel better. In fact, it probably caused physical reactions in his body that weren't healthy for him anyway. And it didn't make any difference to the people who he was angry at. If he had left the train without knowing the truth of the situation, he might have carried his anger and frustration and irritation with him for the rest of his day. And what good would that have done? We've already acknowledged that our energy has power. If that is true, what good does it really do to become angry or frustrated or irritated? What good does it really do to yell at that jerk on the road? It's true. It's funny. It does no good at all. He's not going to care. He doesn't know. You're going to get upset. Why not just bless him, wish him a safe journey instead? In doing so, we have the power to choose heaven and hell right here, right now. All we have to do is choose. And we can change our minds, and we can choose to do so in an instant. And that leads me to the next point. How willing are we to let go of ideas and thought patterns that no longer serve us? It takes courage to change our thinking, especially if we've had long-held beliefs that we've invested our lives in for many years. We may have spent many years defining who we are by a set of behaviors that actually don't serve us well anymore. And even though we know that they may be adding to our pain, they're still pretty difficult to give up. Old habits die hard. It is never too late to change, to say, that's who I was, rather than that's who I am. Part of that letting go may lead us to look at our emotional world. In our relationship, what grudges are we still holding from our past? What are we keeping alive inside us that may be holding us back from that positive energy flow that is waiting to be released in us and through us? What about the other F word? Forgiveness. Forgiveness is nothing more than releasing the negative energy that we are holding about something. It does not condone what the other party did to us. It doesn't require the other party's participation. It doesn't make what they did okay. It doesn't even mean that you're going to forget. In his series, The Keys to the Kingdom, David Owen Ritz describes why we need to be willing to let go of our resentments in this way, and I quote, "When you resent the past, you keep it alive as unhealed energy within yourself. Holding on to resentment in this way is like taking poison and expecting someone else to die." It's kind of cool. You never really repay the other party for the harm they caused you by holding onto your feelings, as you might think. In the end, you only succeed in harming yourself because the energy of resentment is polluting your own life. Ask yourself, is holding onto this thought serving me well? If it no longer serves me, releasing it, creating a vacuum that can be filled with new good. End quote. Note that what I just spoke about relationship, we can ask that same question in all aspects of our life. If we never seem to have enough money, we may want to examine how we are thinking and talking to ourselves about money. Do we constantly say, "I don't have enough," or "I can't afford that"? From your thoughts to God's ears, that's what will be received, because you are creating it, we are creating it with energy. Similarly, in the area of our health, we think it, we feel it, we create it. If we want to choose different health, we need to choose different thinking. Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, was told that she was likely to die from tuberculosis. She disagreed. She decided that she was not going to buy into that diagnosis. She denied the power that thought had over her, released the thought of illness, and replaced it with thoughts of wellness. And her tuberculosis was healed. Her mantra was, "I am a child of God, and I do not inherit sickness." Let's bless the hidden thoughts that we might hold from our past and that no longer serve us. And then let's release them and affirm new good for ourselves. We are children of God, and abundance is our right. Next, let's try and give up negative thinking. I say try, for a good reason. You know how many denominations give up something for Lent? People give up chocolate, they give up eating meat, they give up coffee, or they give up television. My mom used to give up smoking. She'd be very delighted to start again on Easter Sunday, but that's a whole different story. At Unity, we decided that giving up that physical stuff is too easy. So we use Lent as an opportunity to eliminate negative thinking. Let's eliminate negative thinking. Giving up chocolate is easier. And yet our goal must be to live from that energy of love. And that cannot coexist with negative thinking. One of the techniques that I saw, and I wish I had enough bracelets that I could have brought everyone one, is to take a bracelet, put it on your hand, and anytime you find yourself saying something that is a complaint or a negative thought, you flip it to your other hand. And it's just a mindfulness technique to bring your awareness to how often you're thinking in a negative way. And finally, One of the most powerful ways to change the energy of your thoughts is to develop an attitude of gratitude rather than complaint. We need give no attention and no power at all to things that we don't want more of in our lives. Instead, let's focus on all the good that surrounds us. Scotiabank has that wonderful slogan, "You're richer than you think." Love it. One of my favorite Bible passages is from Philippians, chapter 4, verse 8. Finally, brother, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is commendable, whatever is lovely, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. End quote. We're so fortunate to live here in this country as all this turmoil that we see is going on in our world around us. Let's remember to put things in perspective. Let's not sweat that small stuff that doesn't matter, and that we only remember it doesn't matter when some tragedy befalls us. Let's remember to listen to Monty Python and always look on the bright side of life. We know that when we focus on the good, more good will come to us and to the people who surround us. We can change the world with the power of our thinking. That is putting God first. That is putting love first. And that is praying without ceasing. As Myrtle Fillmore put it, and I quote, "Since two or more gathered together have the tremendous power that Jesus promised, what power would be released if thousands could be united in speaking one thought?" End quote. And finally, I just want to read to you the Lord's Prayer as it was translated from the Aramaic. I've spoken today about energy and thought. And the first time I read this and heard this, I was struck by how 2,000 years ago, they knew about the power of energy. And so now, technology is merely confirming what Jesus already knew. And I'll read it to you. Father, Mother, Birther, and Breath of all, create a space inside us and fill it with your presence. Let oneness now prevail. Your one desire then flows through ours as energy fills all form. Give us this day our physical and spiritual nourishment and untangle the knots of error that bind us as we release others. Don't let us appearances make us forgetful of the source, but free us to act appropriately. For age to age from you flows the glorious harmonies of life. May these statements be fertile ground from which our future grows. Amen and amen. As we leave here today, let's remember our power as God beings, as expressions of God. Let us remember to choose loving kindness with others, with ourselves, in everything we think, in everything we say, in everything we do. The God in me honors the God in you. Namaste.